Hello, folks. Welcome to another edition of Social Media News Live. This is going to be a fun show with just Connor and me, and we're going to be talking all about our do-overs, what we would do over. So, Conor Brown, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm great. I love a duo show, a do-over show.
That's right. Hopefully, we won't have to do over this show. But yeah, so we are excited to talk about what we would do over. We would love to know what you would go if you had to start over all from the beginning. What would you change? Like, it's really fascinating. I think we can learn from each other's mistakes. And, as my kids are getting older, my daughter's actually working for me. She's kind of in this business. Like, she can learn stuff from this. So I'm really excited for you guys to chime in about this show. And you know what? If you would help us out. Oh, we got some people popping in already. Gary Stockton saying, good morning and happy Friday, friends. Good morning, Mr. Gary Stockton. He looks like he's having some coffee. Have some on me, Gary. That's going to be awesome. And then we have my friend Ask Ralph from Ask Ralph podcast. He goes, hello there. Looking forward to going back in time. We promise we won't get up to 88 miles per hour with our flex capacitor. Hopefully we'll be a little bit calmer than that. But yeah, so if you do me a favor, and would you share this out to other people on the interweb? Somebody who maybe needs a do-over, maybe disappointed, maybe struggling where to start if they're starting a new business. This would be the show for them. So call them in down below, and we'll be talking all about what our top 10 do-overs are. And look, the other Gary is in here as well. We've got Gary Ebels was here. Ibels, I can't even see. If I could do over, I'd learn how to pronounce names better. That's what I would do starting out. And Ralph says he is not about podcasting, but I could do anything over. I would have more present for my wife and kids when they were younger. Oh, Ralph, I feel you. Our kids are out of that. My kids are out of the house now. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit. And Jim Pugh says, good morning. How do we start over if we are not tall? I don't know. I don't understand. Maybe, I don't know. Get on a stool. Get on a stool.
His opinion, he's short.
Yeah,
I think
short people. What's that song?
Randy Newman.
That's right.
He wrote that song. Short people have no reason to live. Insane that's an actual song in the world. And then he went on to write all the music for Toy Story.
Exactly.
Weird.
Yeah. Before we get started, I want to do a big shout out to my pal, my co-host, Mr. Conor Brown. Mr. Conor Brown, if you don't know, owns Vacation Kingdoms. He's an amazing travel agent. He does things all across the globe, sets up great travel for people. He's helped me as well. So if you have a hankering for some travel, and who doesn't? Because the kids are back in school. This is the time to go, right? It's not crowded. It's not insane at the parks. Conor Brown, vacationkingdoms.com. Make sure you go check him out. He's got blog posts. He's got guides. Check him out on his Instagrams and his... Do you do TikToks anymore, Conor?
No, I mean, the TikTok is out there still. I gave it up for Lent 2 years ago, and
never have gone back. Yeah,
never went
back.
So,
but he's all over. And you just went and did some some research for some of this stuff, didn't you? Like for this new Fast Pass thing that's going on and some other stuff.
Yeah. So there's a brand new system in Walt Disney World called Lightning Lane Single Pass, Lightning Lane Multi Pass. It's a paid Fast Pass service. Brand new. I was in the parks testing it a lot. I put together a podcast episode, so you can check it out, vacationkingdoms.com/podcast, or wherever you find podcasts, Vacation Kingdoms. Thanks so much for that plug, Jeff. I appreciate you.
Yeah, well, the thing is that podcast is really great because it's not just about Disney. He rotates through the Magic Kingdom stuff, the Disney stuff, the Disney Cruise Line, and also Universal. So you got everything you need for a vacation right there at vacationkingdoms.com. So what I would love for you to do as we're plugging things is I would love you guys for sign up for my newsletter so you'll know exactly what's coming up, our guests. I really kind of think it's some of the best stuff that I do putting out there. You can find out more about that at jeffc.com/news. The two times a week, Tuesdays and Fridays, those are when those emails come out. And I would love for you guys to sign up and find out more about it. Never written by AI. It's all my crazy weirdo mind. So go check that out at jeffc.com.
You should have that as a tagline, by the way.
Yeah.
Never by AI, always by my crazy mind.
Yes, that's exactly what it should be. All right, so I'm going to hit go on the podcast machine, and we'll get started. Are you ready, Conor?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Let me get everything set up, and why isn't things... There we go. Hello, folks. Welcome to Social Media News Live. I'm Jeff C., and you're not.
And I'm Conor Brown, and this is the show that keeps you up to date on what's happening in the world of social media and more.
Have you ever wished you could hit the reset button and start fresh? Maybe you've learned a few lessons the hard way and wondered what you'd do differently if you had the chance. Well, you are not alone. Conor Brown and I have been there too, and we've got some stories to tell. In this episode, we're diving into our top 10 things we'd change if we had to start over from scratch, from avoiding those oops moments to making smarter choices up front. We are spilling the beans on what we've learned. So sit back, clear your schedule, clear your mind, and get ready for this week's episode of Social Media News Live. Conor Brown, how many mistakes have you made? Have you counted them up?
Well, my mom says I'm perfect, so I don't think any, ever.
Exactly. So we have put together a list of top 10s, and we're going to go through them today, discuss them with you. Feel free to chime in, like if you agree, you disagree, or like, oh, but do this instead, let us know. But I do want to do a shout out to our amazing sponsors, Ecamm. You can find out more about them at ecamm.com/Jeff. That's ecamm.com/Jeff. Use code Jeff15 to save 15% on your first purchase. So Ecamm's amazing. They make no mistakes, but I have, and we're going to talk about that. So Conor, I want you to go first. Like, we've kind of each picked out 5 that we're going to kind of discuss back and forth, but what is your, ranking them up? What's the one that you would start at, number 5?
So I just did for my number 5, monetize sooner than you think. And what I mean by that is it doesn't mean, bringing in $100,000 or something like that, but simply selling something a lot sooner than you think. It could be affiliate links, it could be advertisements, it could be selling a little digital product, something like that. But it's getting in the mindset of actually selling, which is funny because this is what I'll be presenting on at Momentum, which is coming up in just a few weeks. Crazy. I'm going to be presenting on sales. And I think for a lot of people that kind of start with a side hustle or start with something, that they want to build into their full-time gig, they'll do a lot of free. And you should, right? You should jab, and then hit them with the right hook, as they always say. But I think the earlier you start with even just some small little sales things or small ways to monetize, it'll be so much easier over time to make those big significant gains when it comes to sales and actually start getting real valuable money coming in that can maybe make it your day job.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about that money as we go along. I totally agree about, monetize sooner than you think. And a lot of people are like, well, how do I do that? Like, I just started. Well, you mentioned affiliate links, and people think, well, affiliates are like, you have to have so many, so much traffic and all this different stuff. You can actually start, and a lot of podcasters I know have done this. They start like with Audible, and they just put that at the beginning of their show. Like, hey, this is brought to you by Audible. If you want to get some great books, and, they even tie it into what they're talking about. Like, this book is what really helped me with this, with, finances or, scaling or whatever. They can use Audible, and it pays a decent thing. So a lot of those places, if you have those links, you can sign up and become an affiliate. I'm affiliate for Ecamm. I'm affiliate for a lot of things that are actually in my toolbox. And one of the cool things about this jeffc.com/toolbox is that there's a check mark with everything. So I'm disclosing that this is affiliate links because you want to make sure you do that. But it also lets people know, hey, this is how you can help support me too. So any of those things is great. Like, how many people in the comments? I'm interested. We've got Gary in here. Gary says, if I could do it over, I could definitely buy more Apple stock. Yes, I think we all would. Oh my gosh. Especially right after they had that, what was that, Next machine or the Lisa that just kind of bombed? That's the time to buy.
I think Lisa bombed. Next that's what Jobs' other company was, right?
That's right, yeah.
And they brought him back in, yeah. I think the other thing about, starting to sell something or monetizing sooner than you think, like with that Audible idea, if you are a podcast or have a live show, it's just getting into the practice makes perfect kind of space, right? You're creating ad reads, even if you're not getting a whole lot. So then when a big advertiser or you have a product that you actually really want to sell comes knocking, you've already done it so many times that it's so much easier to make that sale and ask for that in your show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. Kira says, happy Friday, y'all. I definitely check out the podcast, Conor. I got to figure out how those new lightning lanes work. And this is a great point from Ralph. He says that I'm finding that managing and finding those affiliates is a full-time job and hard work. So We just talked about this a little bit in the mastermind. We were having a whole monetization thing that Connor is a part of, and some other people are in the comments here, Jim as well. And one of the things is it's really tempting to go everywhere and spread yourself too thin. I was very, very blessed that when I first started, I already loved Ecamm. I was already using them, and so it was a natural fit. So don't do something that's, it's a not fit for your company, and you just kind of see, oh, that they're big, they got some money. Find things that really matter and what would matter to your audience. Like, it makes no sense for me to advertise Casper mattresses on this right now. Really, it may because I like to take naps, but it doesn't fit in really with what my audience sees me doing and talking about. So you got to be careful about that. One of the ways to manage it, Ralph, that I have find is I have a Notion database. You've heard me talk about Notion before, and so I'm able to plug those things in and track it and make sure I know where money's coming in and all that stuff. But it can be overwhelming. I would stick with a couple, like 3 that are really, really good and do really, really well for you, and just really focus on that to start. That's my opinion.
Things too, right? Products that you already use that you really like, you think people will get benefits. What's that old Gillette commercial? I love the product so much I bought the company.
Right,
that sort of thing,
Or the hair club, I'm not just the president, I'm also a member. Yeah, that kind of thing. So, yeah, and Megan Powers says, I would have tried to get harder to get that job at Cisco in 1995. Yeah, that's true. So I just was on, I was recording an episode for Michael Stelzner's new AI just explored podcast, and I had to go back and I was thinking, like, how long have I actually been doing this stuff? And like, my son is now going to be 25, and I was doing it before that. So I've been in this industry for like, it's changed wildly, but for over 25 years. And so my number 5 is don't be afraid to collaborate. Mm-hmm. I remember when I first started, I was so freaky to put stuff out there because I thought everybody was going to copy me and steal my stuff and all this stuff. Like, I wouldn't put pricing on the websites and all this stuff. And that was probably the dumbest thing that I did for a couple of years. I was so paranoid that they're going to take my content and do something with it or steal my idea. I did this great video. They're going to steal it. And that is further from the truth. Being able to collaborate, like, Conor and I collaborate on stuff. I have all these different people that that we're friends. Technically, we would be competitors. Like, I've had Ian Anderson Gray on the show for a lot of times. Technically, he and I kind of do the same thing. Other people kind of do the same thing. But if you have that attitude, you limit yourself so much. So having being on the lookout for collaboration and how you can, what is it? Rising tide raises all boats kind of a thing. I mean, that is so important. And I wish I would have done that earlier instead of been so paranoid about all the stuff that I thought I was putting out there. And, I had to hold everything really, really tightly. So that's my number 5.
And it's also being open to when somebody asks you to collaborate, right? So there's that one side of looking for people to collaborate with, but then when someone approaches you, be open and receptive to that. Like when Jeff asked me to co-host for the first time, I was like, oh my God, are you sure? Me? But I was open. I was so excited. And I've gotten so much from being able to collaborate with people, not just for my own personal things, but being able to even reach other people. Like, I've met so many people through Jeff's network who I really, really appreciate and admire now. So I love collaborating. I think it's great to get a second opinion too, and it helps you get your rut and out of your own headspace. So I think it's super, super important.
The coolest thing now is, because I've been doing this for so long, and I know so many people, it's so great to have this network where I can throw something out there and say, is this a good idea? Or did I word this right? Am I going to offend anybody? I mean, those kind of things make a huge difference. Like, just knowing that you have people who will help you I have Slack channels where I just can throw something in there and people will respond. So those things are really, really cool. So, collaboration, networking, that's all kind of the part of the same thing. That's what I would have done earlier. And we got some more great comments. This is great from Rich. And he says, it's pretty cool waking up to an affiliate deposit, even if even with $50. Here's the thing, and I love that, Rich. And Jim and Chris from the Dealcasters used to say this, because when you do Amazon affiliates, you'll get like 10 cents. My biggest seller right now is those goofy little apples that kill fruit flies, right? You put them in your kitchen. But the thing is, if you sell a gazillion of those nickels and dimes start stacking up, right?
Yeah.
That's what's really cool. And so I think that's great, Rich, for saying that. Gary says, from like Sting says, if you love something, set it free. That's great. And our friend Dustin Stout is back, doing all the great things over at Magi. I just somebody asked me for my Magi affiliate today, Dustin. So you're killing it out there, man. It's awesome. Thank you for stopping by today. So we've done number 5. Yours was monetized sooner than you think. Mine is don't be afraid to collaborate. Number 4, Connor, what's your number 4 top 10 do-over that you would do?
I would focus much more, if I had to do it over again, on chasing consistency and not chasing numbers. So I think, especially when you're creating something and it's going to the internet, whether it's on social media, whether it's building a newsletter, whether it's a live show or YouTube or video or some sort of content, I think it's so easy. And we've all fallen into the trap of seeing how many likes, views, comments we get, right? And having that be the end all be all to determine if it is successful. I think I've grown so much more as a person, and I've understand so much more that you can only put in your work. Everything else after that, it's up to the fates, right? You can do
Right.
plenty of stuff to put things out there and whatnot, but you really need to focus on your input so that when you're putting stuff out into the world, it is what it is. Focusing on consistency, I think, can do that. So you don't get bogged down when you spend all this time making a video and then 2 people watch it, you think it's a failure. No, the success was actually making the video and putting it out there. That was
Yes.
your mission. That was your goal following that. Jerry Seinfeld talks about a thing.
Mm-hmm.
He says your job as a comedian is to simply this: get up and write a joke. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be bad. You just have to get up every day and write a new joke. And then what your job really becomes is to not break the chain. So you have a
Right.
chain of every day. You have an X on your calendar, wrote a joke, wrote a joke, wrote a joke. Then your job is to don't break the chain. That's all you can focus on. So I would much more, if I had to go back in time, just tell myself, just be consistent, be consistent, be consistent.
Yeah. So one of the things, I can't remember who said it, but like what was something, success is mostly just showing up. Like,
Yeah,
and I mean,
absolutely.
that's, I mean that, think about for this show, there's, we have a great community. People show up every week, and we show up every week at the same time. We missed like 1 or 2, or we pre-record if we have to. But I mean, I told somebody who wanted to come on the show this week, he says, hey, I can't do Fridays. I'm like, that's when we do it. Like, that's it. That's when people show up. That's when we do our show. I'm sorry. Anytime else, just let me know. But that consistency, when you think about most people, in our circles, you think about, we're all creators. Most everybody in the chat is creators.
Mhm.
We are doing something that 99% of the rest of the world is not doing, right? Like if you go to your PTA or your church or whatever, and you say, hey, do you do any sort of creative thing? They'll may say I knit or something. They don't, but they're not out like we are in public, social media, live video, whatever. So you're already ahead. The other thing is most people stop though, that once they start trying it, like I think most podcasts last 7 episodes and then they're
Yeah.
done. And so kind of what you said is like, telling yourself to be consistent. And a lot of times it's a lot of people have, like, when I first started, it was fits and stops. I would go for a while, then I'd stop. I'd get a new client and I couldn't do it. But having that one after another, and I know Kira has just started a great podcast that I was honored to be one of her first guests on, that she's being consistent. She's starting that path. And what really matters is continuing and not giving up, even when it stinks and it feels like nobody is listening. People are listening, you just don't know it. And being consistent is just, I would drill that into my younger self over and over and over if I could, because that's a big deal. So
Every overnight success has years of hard work
yeah.
that you don't actually see.
Yeah. So a couple comments is Dustin, he's talking about his affiliates, because he has a cool affiliate program over at Magi.
Yeah.
He goes, I don't love spending money, but I love paying out my affiliates every month. So we were talking about affiliates, partnering with brands who have that vision and know that affiliates are a big deal. That's another thing you look for, Ralph. You had asked that question earlier. So find those brands like Dustin's that are really, really good. Gary says he would not focus as much on social channels and spend more time building an email community. We're going to talk about that a little bit, but that is true, Gary. That email that you own, that is more and more It's really, really important. And then Ask Ralph says, well said. It's not about the numbers, it's building relationships.
Yep.
So, speaking of this, I have my pal from Italy, Nazim. He's
Ah,
he's an old Google Plus friend from
ah,
way back. So Nazim, thank you so much for chiming in today. It's so very, very cool. And he's part of the old school with Dustin and everybody. He's on vacation. I think you just had an anniversary, Nazim. So congratulations with that. I saw a post. It looks like you were having breakfast in bed. I was a little jealous, but that's pretty awesome. Anyway, so it's great. The community thing is worth so much more than 20,000 followers, if you ask me.
yeah.
It just really is. So yours was chase consistency, not numbers. And here's mine. If I could go back and do it all over again, I would create a product from the very beginning, like some sort of, we had talked about this in Mastermind, that I wish I would have created a lead magnet way before. Mm-hmm. So I consider like even a lead magnet a product, because you're giving something away to get an email address. So there is a kind of a transactional thing happening. So it took me forever to do that. It took me forever. And I wish I would have done that earlier. If you don't have a lead magnet or some sort of piece that you can give something, you need to, after this video, not now, later, but after we're done, you need to go and start brainstorming some ideas for creating a lead magnet that then you could upsell later on and build that out and make it into a product. But that's one of those that I wish I would have done a lot earlier. Does anybody else in the comments feel my pain? Because I really wish I would have done that earlier. So,
I mean, if you're not, I think we're going to keep talking about monetization, obviously, but the main difference is if you're not making money from something, it's a hobby, right? If you're spending and putting more into it, it's a hobby, and that's totally fine. You need to have hobbies. You need to do things. Jeff whittles and does other very eccentric things, like plays the banjo, and beards. Would you say beard is a hobby for you?
Not anymore. It may have been at one time, but it is not anymore. It is full time, buddy. Yeah.
So I mean, I think that's super important. Is creating that product, whether it's even if it is a quote unquote freebie, you're still getting something in exchange, and that's taking you away from being a hobby to actually being something that can bring you in that money, because that's what we need.
Yeah. So, and like you said, I know a lot of great hobby podcasters that do great shows and do a lot of cool stuff. And if that's what you want to do, that is totally fine. I get it. There's a couple, there's even a guy in our mastermind who has a full-time job, but he also has this side hustle that he's building. Perfectly fine. That's smart, in my opinion. Like, you have a solid base, and you can go and build your kind of dream job later. So that is really, really cool. So, create a product was mine. So you're up. So number 3 for you, Connor.
Got it. So my number 3 is focus on the content you own more from the start. And what I mean by that is, again, it all comes back to vanity metrics. When you start something, you say, I'm going to get huge on Instagram. I'm going to be the biggest. I'm going to be the biggest threader. Is that what we're calling them?
I guess
Threader?
maybe.
Threader. This side of the Mississippi, right? And that's how I'm going to build everything. And then overnight, an algorithm changes, or your account violates some sort of issue, and everything's gone, right? Mm-hmm. Focus on the content you wholly own. We'll talk about a little bit more when it comes to email in a little bit, but things like your podcast you still own, right?
Yeah.
The PDF downloads, your website. Yeah, algorithm changes are this and that, but you still own it. It's still yours. You can take it and put it elsewhere if you want as well. When you're building a community on somebody else's platform, on that rented land, it can be taken away from you just as quickly, even quicker than it takes you to build it. So invest your time and resources in things that are going to bring you what you want, but also things that are going to last and you can take with you from place to place to place. I would focus on that so much more. I mean, every day I wake up and I'm like, what's the point of this social media stuff, right? Like, is it getting me to where I want, or is it making me feel good about myself? Which more often than not, I feel bad about myself on social media. And I do feeling good about myself.
Yeah. So back in the day, it was more social networking. There were circles, and you could do that. And now there is so much negative stuff that is associated with it. That's one of the reasons we are changing the name to Creator News Live coming up, because I think social media has a bad connotation. But you're totally right. Like, you were on vacation last week, Connor, but we had JP High Tech here, and he had 100,000 subscriber YouTube channel taken away, and it was a mistake from YouTube. They had accidentally flagged his account, and he is still working on getting that fixed. He's got a new YouTube channel, but once again, when you're building on rented land, this can really struggle. I've really been enjoying like writing. I mentioned my newsletter earlier in the show, jeffc.com/news. And one of the things about it is I thought, I'll just take it and put it on LinkedIn. But then, because LinkedIn newsletters do well and all this stuff, but I'm like, I don't know if I want to put that there, because then it's not mine anymore. And, those kind of things, you really got to balance eyeballs versus ownership. And so, it's a tough one to think about. And having those spots that, like your newsletter, your website, I would say your videos, like, most people know that not just to put them on YouTube, but also have a backup copy, because once again, YouTube could take them away or delist them or something like that. And I think video content is kind of the best bang for your bucks. And if you have those, I think you could rebuild if you had to. So anyway, we've got some great comments. I want to pull this up, and this is awesome. And I hear this all the time, and this is from Megan. She goes, I've never taken a sponsor for making a marketer, but I have been hired to host, produce other podcasts and events. So it had beyond paid for itself in that way. I know I talk a lot with Chris Stone and Jim Fuse, who are the Dealcaster guys, and Chris is a great video editor. The reason he does such a good job and takes so much time on his shorts that he does, or his repurposed content, is because it gets him business. Because other companies, other people see how great his stuff is, and then goes, I want that for my stuff. And so that's how he gets, and that's a great way. Like and we had Mike Alton on it was a couple months ago, talking about Zero Listen podcasts. And his whole thing is to get connection. He's using his podcast episodes and interviews as a way to make connections with people he wants to connect with and do business with. So genius stuff out there. You don't have to do it like everybody says you have to. So I think thank you, Megan, for that. So Nazim says, totally agree with that one, Connor. Third-party dependency is not ideal. And Gary says, a Google Plus reference from Jeff's Circles. I miss Google Plus. The Circles were fun. It was that was kind of the cool way to do that. And Tech, he was talking about it last week. So if you haven't listened to that episode, really, really good. He had such a great attitude about it. I would have been I would still be devastated about, having 100,000 plus, because you're making some money off that too.
Yeah. So there's there's a comment from Jim Jim Fuse, Fusion Marketing. He says, this is why I'm using Substack, which I think Substack is a lot of the tech du jour, right? The tech of the day right now. So many people are using it. Mm-hmm. So many people are interested in it. And I feel a little bit of it is shiny object syndrome, like anything, but I've also seen so much success that people have gotten from it. So what I want to know from Jim and anyone else that has dabbled or is thinking of dabbling in Substack is, how do you differentiate that from other third-party platforms, right? Yeah. Like a Blogger that we used to have back in the day, or whatever it might be. I know you kind of own your own products, and it's a way to get just money, like gated content sort of pieces, but what's the benefit of that versus just having it on your website or something like that?
My issue with Substack and I may be wrong. I know Guy uses it now. He switched some stuff over. I don't like seeing these weird numbers and then substack.com when it comes in my email address. A lot of, when my email comes out, it says Jeff from jeffc.com. This is like branded with Substack. I don't know if you could change that, or maybe I'm not subscribed to the right people, but I don't know. That just is like, I want to have, and there's so many Substacks out there, like it's almost grouping them together for me. And I'm like, which one's Jim's? Where? And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something I need to do to change things, but I just thought that was interesting. So Tech Troublemaker says he posted a claim on Substack, but hasn't pushed it yet. Jim says it allows you to paywall and also integrate video, and you get email subscribers. Okay. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. I
So I
mean,
think it's simply a thing of you still have to build your audience somewhere, right?
yeah.
It's not like, you're going viral on X or whatever it is. It's just a way to kind of gate your content.
Abby says she likes the Substack chat, which I have not played with yet. So that's really interesting. Um, so this is great. Ralph says, there's another thing I would do differently. Find my passion and my voice in my show from the start and not worry so much about the editing. Your passion will grow with your show. Those are just facts. That's really smart, Ralph. You know, a lot of times, even with this show, if I go back to look at the first episodes, I was really not showing who I was. And same thing with my emails. I was using AI too much. I was worried about not being professional enough. I think we all struggle with that when we were first started out. So that's great, Ralph. Like going and telling people it's okay to be you. Like you're unique, just like everybody else. So that's what I would say. Um, and Abby says a lot of the big newsletters can get even more personal with people on there. And Jim's talking about Substack and says it also allows community tools. So that's really, really, really good. So yeah, I just need to test it out. I'm not to the point where I want to switch over anything. I'm really loving ConvertKit. ConvertKit has like Substack, has a recommendation engine when I see people coming in through that. You can upload video to that now too. And there's some other things that I really like from ConvertKit. So Dustin, Dustin, you could probably do it way you build things. He says something in me wants to build my own version of Google Plus. Gosh, what I need another thing to build. That's right. But we all miss it because it was more of just social networking. It wasn't a lot of the political stuff, and we can talk. And it was the Wild West. Like it was with live video. It really was a lot of stuff. So, so you just did number 3. Is that what you were on?
I
Focus on the content,
3.
more for the start. Here is mine. Build your personal brand and don't stop. So when we first start out, a lot of us start out with service-based things, right? I mentioned do your products earlier to get away from some of that. But a lot of us, just to pay the bills, we have to offer services. That's what we do. Like, hey, we're website designers. Hey, we're social media managers. We'll do this for you. We'll do that for you. And that's great. So you're doing service-based stuff. And that just is the way it is. So you got to pay the bills. It's a way to pay the bills. The thing is a lot of times, and what happened for me, I went and worked for Social Media Examiner. I wasn't a 1099. I was a contractor, but they were my biggest client, right? They were the ones. And then before that, I had started on mainly Pinterest tips, and I kind of grew that. That's how they noticed me. That's how I got into that organization. What happened is, because I was so busy and doing so much stuff for them, started with Pinterest, then went to Instagram, then started doing all their live shows and then I spoke at all the conferences, all that stuff. I let my personal brand kind of stagnate. I didn't do stuff. I mean, my personal brand was I was out there, but I was under another company, and I was doing stuff for other companies too at the same time. I was doing stuff for Tailwind, all sorts of things. So I kind of let my stuff die, and that's what I wish I could go back and tell myself. Yes, you're going to have to work harder. It's going to, the last thing when you're working for a client and you're doing all this stuff is to come back and then have to work on your stuff, which is even harder in a way. Like, it's like, am I too salesy? Am I doing this? Am I doing a humble brag that sounds really gross? That kind of stuff. So I would tell myself, keep your personal brand growing. It's okay to pivot. Like, I could have pivoted from mainly Pinterest tips to something else, but don't lose yourself in doing work for clients. Now, that's easier said than done, but I wish I would have kept, like we talked about consistency earlier, I wish I would have kept going with my own show. If you watch mainly Pinterest tips, when I started, it was great. Then it started like missing every other week, and then it was like every 3 weeks, and then it eventually just kind of died. So that's the thing that I would do different.
Yeah. I mean, I totally get that too. I've definitely faced that in my own things as well. You have to balance life. You have to balance what's paying the bills. And at the same time, where you want to get, and a personal brand can kind of get you there. I also think, Jeff, it's so important because today, more than ever, when we talk about things we can trust, people like to buy from people, right? And they like to buy from people that they think they understand and know, like, and trust. And the best way to do that is to have a personal brand. Like, I know Jeff is the beard guy who talks about pooping his pants a lot, and I want to buy from him. I want to buy from him,
My
right?
depends. My depends. Yeah. My branded depends.
But you're making those connections with people, and the easiest way to do that is through a personal brand, right? Personal is the key word there. When you're being personal, you're relating to other people, and other people can relate back to you. So you've already formed this connection. I mean, it happens all the time. You'll be with Jeff, the big superstar that he is, at one of these many events that we go to, whether it's a podcast conference or something, and people come up and say, "Oh, I feel like I know you because I've watched you for so long," and they're meeting in person for the first time. It's because he's done such a great job at creating that personal brand that people can connect to, even it's through just a camera and the chat.
Yeah. And this goes back to building the product, because I want to talk about that. I really would encourage people just starting out is, yes, you have to do services because you have to pay the bills most times, or you're working for a company as a contractor like I did with Social Media Examiner. And I would just really say, like, don't forget about your product, right? Don't forget about, if you're doing training, trying to do training at scale, like record.
Yeah.
I tell everybody who is presenting or speaking, whatever, always record everything you do. If you're going on somebody's virtual conference and giving a speech, record it so you can use it later, or you can put it in something that you're gonna, like a membership or a course or something. Always record everything where you're speaking at. Even if it's just audio, that could be something for a special edition of a podcast, right? It could be, whatever. It's just, don't let that content go away. If you're putting the time in to putting a presentation together or speaking in a virtual conference or even at somebody else's podcast, like those notes that you are hopefully preparing for and with, those you can turn into something else. So always think about product, because the thing is, a lot of us times as solopreneurs and entrepreneurs, we're like, yeah, we don't have to talk to, we don't have to deal with the man, and like, we don't have a corporate job, because those people could lose them at any time. Sadly, like, people can downsize, or they could bring things internal. I've done podcasts that I thought was going to last for a couple, at least a year. Then they decided, hey, you're doing such a great job, we're going to take it internal, and they don't need me anymore. Yeah. So you always run the risk of that. And the key is trying to diversify enough and find those things that you can do that you can, like, if it's just you, it's you. Like, you're killing what you eat is what it is. Yeah. You eat what you kill. And so having those opportunities and thinking about, okay, I have to build, I don't want to rely on these services that I'm doing to go away. I want to be able to have people come to me and let me sell them my things, and, that kind of stuff. So, Anyway, some comments, and I'm very passionate about that. I hope you can tell, because I'm like, I've been through it. I have been through it. Kira says, this is great point, Jeff. As a service-based business, we definitely spend more time building client brands than their own. She's really trying to shift this year. And I think a podcast is a great place to start. I think that having a pillar piece of content, and I think we've talked about this before, if you look at like people we look up to, like Lou Mangello, his whole thing started with his podcast. Everything else comes from that. His live Wednesday show, his Momentum conference, all those things flow out of that. So what is your pillar piece of content that you're creating, even if you have services that you're offering? What are your thoughts, Connor?
It's about being consistent with that too, right? The reason that everything works for Lou is because he's doing it for so many years.
Right.
So the first pillar that you have to get so good at being consistent at it that it's muscle memory. And when it's muscle memory, then you have much more time. Like when we first did our first podcast, we all remember that. It probably was a 30-minute episode, right? And it took us, I don't know, 10 and a half hours to figure out how we this record.
Right.
Oh my, edit, upload. But then it gets a little bit shorter, and the editing time gets a little bit quicker, and you make things much more streamlined. So consistently picking what you want to do first that's what's going to make you be able to start doing the live more consistently. And that's how you build your brand. I think it's showing up, being yourself, but consistency.
Yeah. And this, I want to bring up this point from Megan. She goes, sometimes employers, clients don't want you to have your own brand.
Yeah.
I have not, let me think, have I ever had that? Maybe not, maybe way at the beginning, but not for a long time. So that I know people who struggle with that though. I know like recently people who have had like, hey, they didn't like that, you going out there and doing that. So on those kind of things, what I would tell you to do is know that you're not going to keep that client for very long. Like work on trying to replace that money as quick as possible, because all that's going to do is going to keep you from moving forward. It's like you're pretty much in a holding pattern because of that. Unless it's really, really, really a lot of money and whatever. But I'm like, most of the time it's not. They're just being selfish because they want you to be seen on your channel and not their other channel. And if they want that, then they need to pay more. I mean, if they want you to be exclusive, it's just like when I do an Amazon video and people say, hey, can we put that on your channel? So I'm like, yeah, it's going to be X amount of dollars because it's no longer exclusive to me and I'm getting all the benefits and all that kind of thing. So I know it's hard to do that, and I'm not saying it's easy and I've got it all figured out, but as long as you have those type of people in your life, you're in a holding pattern.
Yeah.
Until you move past it.
It's easy to think you're going to be wedded to a client or something like that forever, but I think you need to go into everything with the mindset of something's going to go wrong. A breakup is going to happen.
Right. It's going to go. Yeah.
That's great. If it doesn't happen, that's great. But I think you need to set yourself up for the possibility that it could happen. So to Megan's point, I think, if someone is approaching you and they're a new client and they're laying out these terms, what Jeff is saying is they're either going to pay more for that, or you have to seriously consider not taking that as a client, because you're really limiting where you're going to go after this contract or whatever it might be.
Yeah, because you need to, and this goes back to one of our other points, like starting from the beginning, building your brand. Mark Schaefer has some great stuff about that in his books. Like that's all you've got. And like, that's, if somebody's trying to limit you, then they either got to pay a lot of money to you, or that you're just gonna have to pass on that one, or start looking for an exit strategy. Mm-hmm. So Nazim says he's got that problem with his Italian lifestyle blog. I love that, Nazim. I need to go back and check that out. You've had it forever. He says, much to work, but we'll back in soon. I'm going to Italy, October, Nazim, so we need to talk. And he says also, love this top 10 do-over. So, yeah, I think we need to talk more and be more transparent about this kind of stuff, because, one, it helps people. And I wrote in my email, it keeps you from stepping in things that other people have stepped in before. So Megan says, both shows I got hired to do took it in-house after it made their podcast awesome. Megan, I've been there. I have been there. And then Nazim says, we lost Versace digital-wise when a fund bought them and took the operation stateside. Yeah. The one thing, and I don't have this on my list, but one thing is diversifications. Don't put your eggs all in one basket. And that goes for platforms, that goes for clients, that goes for services, that goes for your own products. Like, if you're not diversified, you're going to get burned eventually if you're in it for any amount of time.
And that's something that, people are doing for hundreds of years, diversifying their portfolio, right? Like, it works in the stock world, and they seem to know what's going on. It's got to work in other places. You're hedging your bets.
Yeah. So I grew up in a farming community, and so you would always you wouldn't just plant one type of thing, and you wouldn't, you try to diversify and like try it different things, different fertilizers on different crops, and you just have to do that to survive. So it's almost like, it is a lot like farming. You've got to take the time spreading the seed out. You got to cultivate your content and all the stuff that you're doing, and then but you never know. COVID could come and wipe it out. Like, a lot of things happened that we weren't expecting, but having diversification is what saved my business during that time, and being able to do this live stuff. So Gary says he would probably invest in better equipment like lighting earlier. The problem, Gary, I think a lot of people, they think that they have to have all this stuff to make good content, and really, I started with the Blue Yeti, and I know Chris Stone, if he's listening, is cringing. He hates the Blue Yeti, but I did it I had the Pro one, where it's actually plugged into the soundboard. But it worked. Like, if you go way back to the YouTube videos, I didn't have any background. I'm sitting in this like shed thing with like shelves behind me, but I was consistent. And so, yes, I think having some better stuff early, but a lot of times I had no money. Like, I had no money when I started. Like, we talked about this in Mastermind. Like, I remember using like whereas copies of like a Photoshop, trying just to like, I got to get this stuff done, and things would crash, and staying up all night. So yeah, it's very important.
to Gary's point, and this is something I was going to add to my list. This might be number 6, but it's your setup, whatever you're creating. I would have made it as easy as possible to create much sooner, because I I had tried YouTube for a little bit, and this was my process. I would get my light kit out of my closet. I would set it up. I would position my stool ever so perfectly. I would make sure my back was well lit. I put the tripod up. I put the camera on. I made sure the sound was. I did all of that, and I would record one video, maybe two, and put it all away. And I realized
Right.
I need so much time to do this, it's not worth it. So now what do I have? The mobile command center right
Right.
here. It's
Right.
one desk, my soundboard's here, two lights, a simple Insta360 4K webcam, right? I can click two buttons and I'm recording like that. That is something that I think I would want to do so much earlier, because I would have been able to create so much more content so much more quicker.
Yeah, that is totally a good piece of advice. And I tell that when people are wanting to start a podcast or to start doing video, it's like, you've got to have a station, even if it's a corner, a little one, but have everything set up. Because like you said, Connor, having to set up, that just is another layer of friction that
Yes.
keeps you from creating content. And creating content is hard. Like, listen, we talked about like 99% of people aren't doing what you guys are doing. So reducing that level, like I have my mic on my boom pole where I can just pull it down, and I have everything set up, nothing moves. I don't ever take this camera actually off of the tripod. One, it's because it's a pain in the butt to get to, but other than that, it's just like, it's there, it's always on, click a button, go. Very, very yes, Jeff, that's Rich, I did say that it's a bad, don't do it, kids. Don't use cracked software. Pay for Adobe Student Edition. So Abby says, what about some time management or productivity routine do-overs? I'm looking at you, Jeffrey. I'm your dad. Don't call me Jeffrey. And finally, listening to your daughter and getting Notion. I did. So she was a big Notion fan before. I had played with it. But yeah, I would have more take the time to come to set up systems and processes before. I mean, for a long time, I was just throwing stuff out there and forgetting things. And, so having a system is very, very important. So, yeah. And Kira says, I love the idea of simplicity in the beginning. It's easy to feel like we need to have a complicated setup, which results in gear acquisition syndrome. Yeah, very true. I had gas a lot when I first started. I still have gas quite a bit.
I had gas just yesterday. I had gas.
That's because you ate a bar taco.
Oh,
And yeah, so Gary says also, I do pretty much have a push button creation environment now. Gary has a great like mobile rig he put together that he was sharing on Instagram. It's pretty awesome. Like, so you can, think things through and make it easier for yourself as you keep going. Like Gary's got it down. So, so what are we on? So I did number 3. So number 2, Connor, is you. We got to get going, man.
The thing I would have wanted to do earlier is attend more events and connect with as many different types of people as possible. When you're first starting out, attending an event, it can be like a huge cost. And it is a huge cost.
Yeah.
Even when you're not starting out, it's always a huge cost. But I always think it pays dividends, not necessarily for, the tracks that are going to be at the event, the sessions or whatever, but it's the networking. And I hate networking. Like, it's the worst. It's pulling teeth with me to meet new people and go out of my way, right? But it always pays dividends. One big thing for me is I wish I started going to a Momentum sooner. And I think there was only a couple ones before I started attending. But that has opened me up to so many new people. It's opened me up to Jeff, which has opened me up to other circles of incredible creators and entrepreneurs. It opened me up to, when I'm talking about attending events and connecting with many different types of people, I mean, people that you might not share all the similar interests or backgrounds or things like that. I met Paul Gowder, who's been a co-host on this show from Momentum. Paul runs powwows.com, which is all about finding your Native American heritage and Native American powwows around the country. I don't know anything about that, right?
Right.
I don't understand anything about that. But Paul has been one of the most incredible people to be connected with, because I've learned so much from him, because he's so brilliant at doing what he does from an entrepreneurial and content creation standpoint. The only way I was able to make these connections is by putting myself out there and going to events. And those events have also led to me being in some pretty incredible masterminds and connecting with people, especially when you're by yourself, having a sounding board like Jeff talks about, having Slack channels, people that you can go out to that you've met at these events or you've met through these masterminds. It's been a godsend, and it's really helped me in times where I'm like, forget it, blow it all up, forget about it.
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah.
They can bring you back down to earth and,
Right.
and help you with all that.
Yeah, so I would echo that as well. I remember I drove across country. I think this was 20. This was before this. It was 2014, 2013 to Social Media Marketing World. It was a California trip. Took me a couple of days. Stayed with some buddies, but from that trip, I got to meet Ian Anderson Gray. I got to meet Eric Fisher and Anthony Witt at the podcast movement meetup after that, and we have ever since then been meeting every Monday for our mastermind. So it's Eric, me, and Anthony, and that's been amazing. Like, you got to think about that every Monday for over 7 years maybe, and that led to another one where I do Tuesday with some other guys. And so those groups, Social Media Marketing World, great event. Momentum, I love because it's so small. I love also the Ecamm thing that they started last year, their creator camp, and Conor's going to be at this one this year as well as I'm going to be there with doing a session. So those things are, I love the intimates. I mean, I love the big ones. I love the big stage, Social Media Marketing World. They're fun. It's great. It's like you see all your friends, but then these smaller ones like Momentum, you have those friends, but you have another level of intimacy where you're getting in together and building your brand and your business. And there's people, like you said, outside of like your normal channels. That's what we need to do more of. Is like, if I go to Social Media Marketing World, nobody really is going to buy my stuff because they're all like me, right? They're all marketers trying to figure out things. But at like places like Momentum, I'm getting somebody who works at the Smithsonian. I'm getting a guy who writes books full time. I mean, all these cool entrepreneurs. And that's what I love about those small things. And also the power of masterminds. My business would not be where it's at if I did not have those masterminds that I meet consistently. We talked about that earlier, over and over. So bunch of great stuff there, Conor. I love attending events. I think that's really, really, really great. So my number 2, and we touched about products and stuff, but building an email list from day one. It's your own stuff. If you have a podcast, and I luckily lucked out for this, is I didn't know what else to do, so I just had a call to action. Join my newsletter on the end of my Manly Pinterest Tips podcast, and I always have had some sort of call to action. But it's been just this year where I've really invested in my email, like really thought about what I want to do, how I go about it, and like who I'm actually having a conversation with the people who subscribe. So I would do that. Like, build your email list, it's a community. Like, they respond back to me right now. And so it's really, really hard. I think doing an email newsletter is like blowing your nose without a Kleenex. You know something went out, but you're not really sure where it lands, right? So that's the thing. It's hard because you don't get that feedback right away, but it's so worth it. And so I would start an email list day one.
Got it. So it's a way to infect people with your disease. That's what I'm hearing.
Right, it is. It's like, it is. Right. It's getting them, inoculated to Jeff. And so Nazim says, love your newsletter. Thank you, Nazim, so much for that. I appreciate it.
What's incredible is, that it hits someone's email inbox, or at least the service provider tells you that. What's been really cool for me is I just relaunched my newsletter, and I had all these people that I hadn't emailed in quite a while. And when I emailed them, I just said, hey, respond to this. Let me know if you're excited. And I got dozens of responses from people. So they knew me because I was showing up in their inbox, and they still know me. So I think it's a great way to connect with people.
Yeah. And Paul Gowder, who we've had on before, he's got an email course that's amazing. Liz Wilcox, who we've had on before, her email marketing thing is so much. It's helped so much because you don't have a blank page. You can kind of get some inspiration from her templates. So this is a great question and Gary says, Social Media Marketing World was very, very cool. Ask Ralph says, how do you find a mastermind to join? Great question. There's a couple of ways to do it. Some masterminds are like the two I do Monday and Tuesday are free. They happen organically. We just said, hey, let's meet and let's do this. And it's been beneficial for that many years. So we have continued it. Like, so when we meet together in a conference or whatever, it's just like we continue the conversation, right? There's paid masterminds, which I run one, and Conor's a part of that, and some other people. Those are great too. Those are usually for a set amount of time. I think ours is 6 months is what we're doing, and then with an option to renew or whatever. But if you're having trouble finding a mastermind, Ralph, it's just ask. Like, find people. And what I think with a mastermind is you don't want to have somebody who's like me getting underneath Pat Flynn's mastermind. Like, he is stratospheric, right? Like, he is like way up there. You want to get somebody who's like 2 or 3 levels of where you want to go, and like ask them like, hey, can we get together? Or, hey, would you mind mentoring me with some 6 other people? Ever thought about a mastermind? Those are the things that I would try to help you find a mastermind. The other thing would be a lot of that stuff can happen at conferences. You know, Conor mentioned getting together. Like, there's a lot of masterminds that came out of Momentum. There's a lot of things, you know, meetups and stuff that have come out of that. But just ask people. What do you think, Conor?
I think it's about understanding the people you follow as well. I mean, I think if you're having trouble too, you could start one, like what Jeff did, right? Try to find some people that you think are in the same spot, and then that one person or 2 people that are a little bit above, beyond where you're trying to go, and just say, can we just hop on a call and kind of see where it goes from there? I think people are apprehensive just because it can be new people, right? It can be a commitment, those sorts of things. So it's kind of, you get out what you put in sort of situation, but start small and go from there. And I mean, just,
and it's okay to it's okay to leave ones that aren't working. Like, that is fine. Like, you don't want to speak. I don't think you should go in thinking like you're going to be stuck with these people.
No.
Like the ones we did, we wanted to have a commitment, because there's that awkward phase always as you're getting to know each other and stuff. And then, give it some time. But then if it's not working, it's okay to leave. The reason I started mine with Eric and Anthony, I was trying to figure out how to do a podcast. That was way back in the day, and they both had great podcasts. And I'm like, hey, let's meet. And so I just asked, and they shouldn't have let me in, but they did. So, you never know. There's a great question from Angel. Says, what are some differences with an accountability group versus a mastermind? There's a lot of times masterminds are, there's different ways. You can have hot seats, and you can have some different things. I like to run masterminds like an accountability group. So there is, like, we do hot seats in ours, and we bring people on each week, and then we also hold people accountable. Like, hey, you said last week you're working on your lead magnet. Where are you at? Like, how's it going? And that's, I like those kind of things. I like kind of a blend. With Eric and Anthony, we've been doing it so long, we don't really have hot seats. We're like, hey, can I take the time? Because I got this. Like, can you help me with this? Or, hey, and I mean, we get into family stuff. It's like, it's not just business. So we've been doing it for so long, and that's what I love about it. So if you can get those kind of things, that's really awesome. And let's see here. Gary says, I would do more engaging with smaller creator channels, leaving more comments. Yeah, I need to do a better job of that as well. And he says you can develop some great relationships through engaging in YouTube and Instagram. Yeah, that's how I got started. Like, I went, if you go trace all the path all the way back, I was in Google Plus, and I had made a comment, and I was making comments under Peg Fitzpatrick's. She's just huge in Google Plus, and she kind of took me under my wing, because I was asking smart questions and wasn't spammy. I wasn't like, hey, since you replied, can you be on my show? I mean, I wasn't doing that kind of stuff. It's more like, why did you say that? Does that really make a difference? And making those thoughtful comments, like Gary was saying, that's what does it. All right, so that was building
number one.
Yeah, number one. So what's your number one, Conor?
I don't have many regrets in life, but one is simply, I wish I would have started sooner. Whatever it is, I wish I would have started sooner. I think back to when I was first starting out, and it was a lot of sitting and waiting for that perfect time, right? Waiting for something to be absolutely perfect before I started or dove all into it. And I look back on that now, and I think, man, if I just started sooner, how much further would I be right now?
Yeah.
You have an idea that you want to execute. I think the number one thing is to just start right now and figure it out. Don't worry about perfection, but I really wish I just would have started sooner.
Yeah, and what is that whole proverb, like, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, and the second best time is today. So don't beat yourself up if you haven't done that. but just go like, I'm starting today. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do what I've said. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be messy, and it's going to make me feel uncomfortable. But you never go to the next level without going through being uncomfortable. So that's what I think that's great. My big thing is I would hire an employee sooner. That's my number one thing. So I hired my daughter. I mean, I've had contractors and VAs and that kind of things, but I hadn't hired somebody in to do stuff until Abby, my daughter, started. And that has opened up so many things. And I know I've heard it. I've heard hire an employee, hire before. It's hard when it's like money that you could be using for you or your company. Don't wait as long as I did. So think of it as an investment, move that direction, hire somebody who can do things that you really need done, but you can be your skills can be used better elsewhere. So Abby is helping me with that. She says, this is why my daughter's awesome. She goes, hair flip right there. So yeah, she knows she's great. So anyway, that is today's show. Our top 10 do-overs for what we would do if we started over. And thank you guys so much. We have some great comments. Ralph says, thank you, gentlemen. Enjoyed the show today. Nazim, as always, thank you so much. Kira says, this was such a valuable show. Truly, guys, thank you. I'm writing all these notes on sticky notes, putting on my desk so I keep this wisdom top of mind. Thank you for watching over on LinkedIn. Conor Brown, where can the people find the amazing Conor Brown if they want to get your stuff and services?
Absolutely. You can find out more about me at vacationkingdoms.com and across the social medias at Vacation Kingdoms. Like Jeff was talking about, we have some great podcast episodes. So head over to whatever podcast player you got and search Vacation Kingdoms to find out all our stuff.
Awesome. And don't forget, our show is sponsored by the amazing folks over at Ecamm. I would have started with them way long ago, too. Ecamm.com/Jeff. Use code Jeff15 to save 15% on your first purchase. And also, don't forget about my newsletter. We talked about it a little bit today, the email. I would love you guys join that. There's a welcome sequence that can put you through, and then you get into my newsletter. Shoot me a reply. I'd love to hear from you. jeffc.com/news. And with that, we'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much for watching, everybody.